very happy to be here. And first thing we're going to do is to learn a word in chimpanzee language, okay? So I'm going to make the call. It says, hello, how are you? And you listen very carefully. And you know what a dog sounds when the dog pants, goes, right? So the chimpanzee sound is just this, we call it a pant hoot. So it's all one breath, okay? So I'm going to do it, you're going to listen, and then we're going to do it together. And then you'll know how chimpanzees say hello, okay? Here we go. That means, hello, this is me, Jane. So now, shall we do it together? 1, 2, 3. So each one of you had your own little call, and if I was a chimpanzee, I would know who each one of you is. So how many of you here, no, you're all, the oldest of you is 6, 7, is that right? Of you young ones, yeah. Because when I was first born, I loved animals, and I bet many of you love animals. And I'm told by my mother when I was 1.5 years old, just a little girl, little tiny girl, maybe you've got a brother or sister of 1, and so my mother came up to my bedroom one day, and she found in my bed a whole handful of wriggling earthworms. And of course, all the earth was there too. And I was lucky to have a wonderful mother. She didn't get angry. She just said, Jane, if we leave them here, they'll die. We'd better take them back out into the garden. So we took them back into the garden. So all through when I was a little girl, I loved animals, all sorts of animals and birds. And I used to spend hours outside watching them and learning about them, the little spiders and every creepy crawly thing, and watch the birds. And we had a dog. I expect many of you have dogs or cats. And yes? Okay, how many of you got a dog? Yeah, great. And how many of you got a cat? Who's got a cat? Okay, all right. Okay, so it's very important, I think, to share our lives with animals. And I had a very, very special dog. My very, very special dog was called Rusty. And Rusty was more intelligent than any other dog that I've ever had. And he taught me so much about animals. He was incredibly clever. And anywhere I went, he would follow. If I climbed a ladder, he would climb after me. He would just do anything that I asked him to do. So Rusty taught me a lot about animals when I was just a little girl. And I also learned a lot from books. I loved books. When I was your age, there was no television. It hadn't been invented. It was just books. And of course, I always wanted books about animals. And my mother was always finding me books about animals. And so I gradually began to learn more and more and more. And when I was just a little bit older than you, I read a book called Tarzan of the Apes. And that's when I decided I will grow up, go to Africa, live with wild animals, and write books about them. And everybody laughed at me. They said, oh, you'll never get to Africa, you're just a girl. But anyway, eventually I worked very hard, and I saved up money, and I did get to Africa. And I met the one man who enabled me to do what I had dreamed of doing, which was go out into the forest and learn about chimpanzees. And at first, they all ran away from me. I mean, chimpanzees are much stronger than me. They're stronger than you. They're about 8 times stronger than a human. I suppose somebody like Arnie Schwarzenegger in his prime would have been able to wrestle with a female chimp, but not a male. So anyway, there I was, out in the forest where I wanted to be, and the chimpanzees taking one look at me and running away. But eventually, one of them, and I called him David Greybeard, he had a beautiful gray beard, and he began to let me get closer. And one day I held out a banana and he took it from my hand. And one day he let me groom him. And because of David Greybeard, the other chimpanzees gradually stopped being frightened as well. And then I got to learn all those wonderful characters. And there are books about them, which maybe you can read. Maybe some of you have read them. So there was David Greybeard and his friend Goliath, and Mr. McGregor, and there was old Flo and her large family, all beginning with the letter F. So it was Fabian, Figan, Fifi, Flint. And they became like my friends in the forest. They were the best days of my life. And there was one very special day when I sat down and Flo, with her new baby, Flint, was nearby. And chimpanzee mothers are very protective of their offspring. They protect them from any danger. But Flo trusted me enough that when her little baby, who just beginning to walk, he came tottering towards me with big wide eyes. And he reached out, looking at me into my eyes, he reached out and touched my nose. And it was such an amazing moment. And Flo, she had her hand around him, but she didn't stop him. So it was a magic moment for me. And then there was another, maybe even more magic moment, because David Greybeard began to let me follow him when he walked through the forest. And on this particular day, I was following him, and he turned off the little trail, and he plunged into a whole thicket with thorns and vines, and he just went sailing through. And for me, I was crawling on my hands and knees, and the thorns were catching in my hair and my clothes. And I thought, oh, well, I've lost David, but never mind, I'll find him another day. So when I finally got through this thicket, to my amazement, David Greybeard was sitting, looking back. It looked as if he was waiting for me. Maybe he was. I don't know. But anyway, so I sat down near him. And lying on the ground between us was a beautiful, ripe, red oil nut palm. An oil palm nut. And chimpanzees love them. So I picked it up and I held it out towards him on my hand. And he turned his face away. He didn't want it. So I put my hand closer, and he turned round. He looked directly into my eyes. He reached out. He took the nut from my hand and dropped it. But at the same time, he very gently squeezed my fingers. And that's how chimpanzees reassure each other. So we communicated in that moment. So David taught me an awful lot about animals. And I just brought one of my animal friends with me. This is Ratty. And probably some of you don't like rats. Rats actually make a most amazing pets. I know many people who have pet rats. But this rat is a very special one. He's a giant forest rat. And they can live about 9 years. And they have been taught to sniff out the explosive. You know what a landmine is? People put landmines during a war so that they blow people and cars up. And after the war, many of these mines get left in the ground and hurt people. So these rats are being taught to sniff out the landmine under the ground. And they make a little scratch, and somebody can come along and defuse the landmine and save many people being hurt. So that's why I brought Ratty. And then finally, this is Mr. H. Mr. H was given to me by a man who went blind when he was 21. And for some strange reason, he decided to become a magician, to do magic tricks. And everybody said to him, but Gary, his name is Gary Horn, Gary, you can't be a good magician if you're blind. And he said, well, I can try. And if he was here now, you wouldn't know he was blind. He gets in early and he puts all his little things in a row so he knows where they are. And he does magic tricks. And then at the end, he'll tell you, I'm blind. And he'll say to you, you know, something might go wrong in your life, because we never know. But if it does, don't give up. There's always a way forward. So Gary Horn has learned to skydive. He's learned to cross-country ski. And most amazing, he's taught himself to paint. And he gave me this Mr. H 32 years ago. So Mr. H has been with me 32 years, and he's been to 62 countries. And Gary Horn thought he was giving me a stuffed chimpanzee for my birthday. So does anybody know why this isn't a chimpanzee? Yes? I couldn't hear.
Because chimpanzees are red, I think she said.
Chimpanzees?
Are red, I think she said. You said
No,
red?
no, those are orangutans.
They're orangutan.
Yes, you over there.
They eat bananas. Because he's eating a banana. They don't eat bananas?
Chimps eat bananas,
They eat
yes.
No, okay.
Come on, just call out.
Just shout out your answers. They don't have tails.
That's right.
Well done.
Well done. So I took Gary's hand and I made him hold the tail. I said, Gary, chimps don't have tails. And he said, never mind, take him where you go, and you know my spirit's with you. So Mr. H has been with me to these 62 countries. But I think the most amazing thing is I now have a picture, a painted picture of Mr. H. And Gary Horn has never seen him. He's only felt him. And he's made this most beautiful picture. So it just shows what we can do if we try. So those are the stories I have to share with you. And we don't have any longer time. But maybe you can read some books about the chimpanzees and other animals, and books about the animals here, your jaguars and your howler monkeys, your squirrel monkeys, your anteaters, all the animals of South America that we have to try and save the forest. Okay?